Dan,
Jay,
what is
yes,
something that every man has in common?
everyone needs dick.
Everyone needs dick. Women need dick too. We're not talking about the male anatomy. We are talking about Philip K. Dick. Welcome to
That's
Hat Guys Talk Books. I am J.R. Murdoch.
I'm J. Daniel Sawyer.
You can find out more about me at jrmurdoch.com.
You can find out more about me at jdsawyer.net.
I have no idea why I'm talking 1,000 miles an hour, other than probably because we're talking about one of my favorite authors.
Oh, God, he's amazing.
And he had such a limited body of work, which is strange. Philip K. Dick. For those that...
Well, you say limited, but I've got the complete short stories. There's 5 volumes that thick.
This is true. But limited in the fact that, much like one of the previous authors we talked about, H.P. Lovecraft, he wasn't around for a very long time.
No, that's true. He died in his 50s, I think it was.
He died in his 50s, and he probably would have been one of those authors that would have continued writing on well into his later years and created
he would
an
have died
incredible
as a typewriter like Jack Williamson did.
Yes. I have a feeling that he would have done greater things. One of the most fascinating things is that he's not a very well recognized name, but
until you start naming titles
and you realize he at one point had more of his works converted to movies than Stephen King did. And this was when Stephen King was at the height of his career.
Yep.
And this is all after he died. All of it after he died.
Not all of it.
Was it?
Blade Runner, he saw Blade Runner before he died.
He did. I did not know that. But
and he walked out of there with tears on his face because he was so happy.
Yes.
With how beautifully done it was.
I when it comes to Blade Runner, the movie, I hate to say it, most people dislike the original version. I loved the original version because it made it more like a noir detective story, which is what
with the narration. Yep.
With all the narration, which is to me what Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep felt like when I first read it. It read like a noir.
I preferred the final cut and the director's cut to the original cut, but it's not really a fair comparison because the few changes they made actually make it an entirely different film. Same sort of thematic area, but the entire approach is different. And so they're almost 2 separate films and both worth watching.
Yes, I will agree. But for me, I don't know. I loved all the little stuff they added because I actually saw Blade Runner before I even knew who Philip K. Dick was. I discovered Philip K. Dick way too late. So when I went back and I was watching it, you get all those little nuances that Harrison Ford is narrating into the story that if you don't know the story, you're like, why are they talking this weird mumble jumble language of Arabic and Russian, and it's some kind of weird street language? But they explained it in the original version of the story, why they were saying it and why they talk that way. And I don't know, to me...
And the recuts actually work better having seen the original cut one time.
Absolutely. Yep. I will wholeheartedly agree because the remakes, like you said, it's a completely different experience. And some of the scenes they added flesh it out in a different way that the original version needed the talky parts. And I know a lot of people are not fans of that, but at any rate, Philip K. Dick, one thing that always got me, I want to say, about most of the stories that I read is he was very much into, is this real or is this not real? He was very much into what is exactly going on. And when you learn about what his life was like, you're like, oh, this is like his real life.
Well, we were talking last time about Lovecraft and how his own relationship with his over-engineered disgust reflex led him to be able to the same thing that made him a raging racist in his youth is what made him such a great storyteller. And it's the same thing with Philip K. Dick. He knew that he was mad.
Yes.
He knew he was crazy and delusional.
Yes.
But he didn't know how to cope with it. So he started writing science fiction.
Absolutely. And that's where some of the greatest, to me, Total Recall is the greatest mind of a story, because if you've read the book or watched the movie, the whole point is that very last line of, how do I know this is real? Well, kiss me before you wake up.
Yep.
Wait, no, was all of that just the whole mind thing? Wait, hold on. I mean, I remember getting to the end of that movie and immediately picking up the book and reading, going, oh my gosh, there has to be more in here. And sure enough, boom. And it's the same. It'll screw with your head because you don't know what's real and what's not. And you're going through going,
And
well, wait.
all of his stuff is like that. All of them.
Yes.
You're entering the mind of someone who finds they cannot trust reality
Or themselves.
or themselves.
They are unreliable narrators at a point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fascinating concept. I think one of the few is Minority Report, where the person knows he's been set up.
Yeah.
But he's now been set up. He's got to try and find a way out of it. But the whole concept of predicting future crimes and arresting people before they commit the crime.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. And Scanner Darkly was another one. Oh.
Such a good one.
Yep.
It's just so many of those just get in your head.
And his desperation to establish a baseline leads to a couple of really wild stylistic consistencies throughout his whole body of work. The obsession with reality is one of them, but another one is that all of his characters are defined by their occupations.
Yes.
Not a single one of his characters do you ever not know what he does for a living, because what he does for a living is the only place that he feels he has a solid grip on identity, and then frequently that's what comes under attack.
Oh yeah, look at everything we just covered, from A Scanner Darkly to Total Recall. Can remember they changed the titles of most of these.
Yeah, we need to talk about the titles. So
we can remember it for you wholesale.
Yep.
Do Android's Dream of Electric
Sheep, which was made into Blade Runner.
Yes. Minority Report
was the Minority Report.
That one and Paycheck, I believe they kept both.
Was Paycheck the same title? I don't know. I'll have to look that up real quick.
I'll have to look it up also, but I remember that one was also, he knew exactly what his job was.
That was, yep.
But instead of getting a paycheck, he gets an envelope full of stuff, and he's like, what the hell? I want my money. But so many of those stories just they
it's based on on the story called Paycheck. Yep.
All right, I thought so. But it's interesting, like you said, when you start digging into his background of Philip K. Dick. I think one of the most fascinating things is he had a safe, not a file cabinet, but a safe that he kept his stories in, because he was convinced the FBI was watching him and they were going to take his stories and use them against him, which leads you to go, Minority Report.
Well, and hilariously, if I remember correctly, and I'd have to go to the declassified database to check, but I believe that actually turned out to be true. The whole science fiction community had been infiltrated and was being spied on at the time.
Yes, and they thought he was just nuts. Oh, it's just Dick. And that was, he.
Yep.
Is it real? Is it not? Does he know? Does he know something he's not telling us? And I think that was one of the most fascinating things about him was him. Yes, his stories were brilliant and well told, but combined with the man, it's just,
oh yeah,
wow. I think one of the most fun I had, and this is when I went back and discovered Philip K. Dick, was Piers Anthony wrote the novelization for the Total Recall movie.
Yes. Oh, I read that. It was really good. I was very surprised.
He had 3 chapters in there of stuff that was not in the movie that explained so much stuff.
Yep.
And I'm like, what? And you get to the end, and that's when you find out at the end, based on the story, We Can Remember It For You Wholesale by Philip K. Dick. That's when I discovered Dick, was after I saw the movie, read the book, because I love Piers Anthony. as an adolescent, Piers Anthony was right in my
Oh yeah.
wheelhouse.
Yep.
We'll cover Anthony in
We're
another.
gonna have to do. Anthony deserves like 2 episodes because
Yeah,
there's
he's
so much
got
there.
quite a breadth of work, and he's still pumping stuff out. Um, he
Even though
does.
he's like 90.
Yes, we will cover him at another stage because I got so much that I could say about him right now. It's like
Hmm.
focus, focus. We're talking Dick. But when I got to the end of that book, and that's when I discovered it was by Philip K. Dick, I put it down and I went and got We Can Remember It for Your Wholesale, and it's a tiny little book. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's a 40-page short story.
yeah. And I'm like, bloop, 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 bloop. Wow.
Hmm.
And that's when you realize, hold on a second, they made a movie out of this. And they,
Yeah, plot wise, if you've seen the film, the point where Quaid kills all of his coworkers because they turn out to be bad guys trying to get him.
yeah, that are
That's the
watching him.
point at which the story ends, and he ends not knowing what just happened or why, but knowing he has to go on the run.
Yes. And that's where Piers Anthony took it and ran with it.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah, fun fact: I actually read the novelization because I wasn't allowed to watch the movie because I was too young.
oh my, oh my. Yeah, the
And the
novelization was far
novelization
spicier.
is considerably rougher than the
Yes,
book than the
it's
film.
rougher and far spicier in places. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's that's because that's Piers Anthony.
Hmm.
Oh wow. No, but
Yeah,
we'll have to do
yeah.
a
Yeah,
we'll
we
have to
definitely got it because Anthony managed to be like twice as lurid as anybody else while being half as explicit, which is a real trick.
yes, yes.
But anyway, whole other episode.
Yeah, I mean we could cover a whole episode on just Bio of a Space Tyrant.
Mm,
Um
which I haven't read yet because
oh wow.
I haven't been able to find volume one. I've got all the others. I've picked them up at garage sales the last few years, but I
That's
haven't
why
been able to
God
find
made the
volume one.
Kindle.
Oh yeah, I hate paying for ebooks. This is terrible because I'm a writer. I sell ebooks, but I like having a book that I can go back and reread, that I'm not going to lose, that can sit on a
I'm surrounded
shelf.
by physical books as well. I have
Yep.
I scared my daughter when I'm like, yeah, I read that in a day. And she's
Mm,
like, you what?
bastard.
I'm like, well, yeah, we've talked about this before. I speed read.
You
If I
speed
sit down
read.
for you give me an hour, I'm going to burn through 100 pages.
Mm,
Um, at any rate, back to Philip K. Dick.
yes.
The man, he had issues, and
Oh
it's
God, did he ever?
I almost like you said, if he didn't have those issues, would he have ever created the works that he created? And I don't think he
Most
would have.
assuredly not. Yeah.
Uh,
So,
I
how much do you know about his life and what was going on with him?
I know limited about his life. All I know is little snippets, like the fact that, like I said, he kept his works in a safe because he was convinced the FBI was watching him, as you said, which was true. But I know he had a very tragic life story up to that point, and
Yes.
I don't recall exactly how he died either.
Well, okay, so he died of a drug overdose,
Ah,
obviously, but as you would expect, he was born a twin, fraternal twin. He had a twin sister who died in infancy or when he was 2 or 3 years old or what have you, and he was intensely bonded to her, and so he grew up his entire life from that point forward, convinced that she was haunting him.
hmm,
And as he came into adolescence, he started hearing voices. I don't know if he was ever diagnosed, but it seems obvious from reading up on him and having known people who knew him that he was a grade A schizophrenic. Not violent, incredibly gentle, also an incredibly devout Christian and occultist, but with a Christian twist, which is really interesting.
Scientology.
He took massive amounts of drugs to try to find reality because he couldn't figure out what was real.
Yeah, I knew he
He
did
came up with
self-medicate.
yeah, he came up with Dick's dictum, which is reality is that which continues to exist when you stop believing in it. And it's as far as first principles of epistemology goes, that's actually really good. um But my favorite story that I heard from a friend of mine who was a friend of his back before he died. There was a birthday party for one of the popular science fiction writers at the time, and it was at my friend's house, who was also a science fiction writer. Phil Dick comes in, says hi, and then about an hour, hour and a half later, my friend gets someone asking him, "Have you seen Phil?" "No, I haven't seen Phil." And everyone starts asking because he was on like an unofficial suicide watch, and no one was giving him drugs because he was having so many problems. This was like in 1980, 1982, shortly before the end. And eventually they found him in the bathroom, and he had found all the prescription drugs in the house, and he had laid them all out in little piles on the floor, and he was trying to stack a particular combination for what he considered to be like what was going to be the ultimate dose that day. And my friend opens the door and sees him, and before he could say anything, Phil says, "Hey, do you have any blah? I couldn't find any." Because he needed it to work to finish out the stack.
Trying to concoct the correct cocktail.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
But he
I
was
knew he was well unbalanced. I had an Uncle Bob who was a paranoid schizophrenic, so very familiar with you need to take your medication at the right time. And the problem is they take their medication and they think, well, I'm fine, I don't need my medication, and then they have an episode.
Or they have the other reaction, which is what Dick tended to have to it, was that you'd get the medication and it would stabilize them, but it would also shave off all the edges of all the emotions, and so they
Yep.
feel like The Walking Dead.
Yep. They lose their
So
personality.
even though they're more connected to reality, they feel less connected to reality, and they're like, "This shit isn't working. I don't want to do this."
Yep. Yep. That's kind of the way Uncle Bob was. And Uncle Bob, same thing, lived in his own world. Quick story, my dad was taking care of him for a while. They were roommates, and my dad had the bright idea of giving Bob some money to go buy groceries because they needed groceries. And my dad left to go to work, came home thinking that Bob went out and bought food. Any food would have been good food. And he comes home and Bob has a 3-tier wedding cake sitting on the table. And he's sitting there with a fork. My dad walks in, "Bob, what the hell is that?" "Well, you said to go buy food. This was on sale." "Bob, I don't care if it's on sale. That's not food. That's a cake. That's dessert. I got a fork for you."
Oh no.
And that was Uncle Bob. In his head, it made complete sense. I like cake. Cake is food. It's on sale, and I've got a fork.
Nice. I've got to get going. My dog is having issues. I need to help. But let's do what's recommendations for stories to get started on Philip K. Dick with.
Oh, you have to start with How Do Androids Dream, or Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
I like that one, but I don't think it's a good place to start. It's really it's very, very, very Dick in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Okay, so that if you want the hardcore entry point, that's a really good one. I'm going to suggest a short story that he wrote in the 1950s called The Defenders.
Ooh.
Which is a fantastic little sort of adventure space opera where a ship sets down on an alien planet and everything is perfect, but then something goes wrong that completely screws with their sense of reality, and they're lucky to escape by the skin of their teeth. Or do they?
Interesting. I will have to dig that one out. I got to go. I know we've talked about collections. I need to fill my Dick collection.
All right. I got to get going.
Sorry, you go take care of the dog. I've been J.R. Murdoch.
I've been J. Daniel Sawyer.
JRMurdoch.com.
JDSawyer.net.
Until next time. Thanks, Dan.
We'll see you later.
All right.